I'm standing in what remains of the village of Fleury-devant-Douaumont. At the time of the Great War, Fleury was a village of around 400 people. During the Battle of Verdun in 1916, it changed hands between the Germans and French 16 different times. Over the course of the war, the town was completely destroyed, and the land rendered so uninhabitable that officials decided not to rebuild it. The land all around here is polluted with corpses, ammunition, explosives, poisonous gas. It's deemed too contaminated for farming or living to resume in this area. This site and several others like it is maintained as a testimony to the war, and it is officially designated as one of the villages that died for France. Now that phrase is one you see a lot here on the Western Front. Mort pour la France. And it's not just a phrase that is used, it carries with it a great deal of honor, a great deal of significance for the French people. So much so that these villages that died for France are still given the status as communes in France. They still have a mayor, even though no one actually lives here. There are signs that tell you that you're entering Fleury and that you're leaving Fleury when you come into this area. So we're going to take a look around, and it's a fascinating place because they've got markers showing you where all of the various people lived. You can see where the baker was, you can see where the farmers were, you can see where the houses were, and of course you can see all of the signs of the conflict, the massive craters that are just everywhere that remind you of what happened here. I've heard multiple people have told me about the immense sadness that you feel in certain areas of the Western Front, and I gotta say that this is the first time that that has really hit me, is walking through Fleury. It's just, I don't even have words to describe seeing this place, seeing these markers, knowing that there are people who have not been recovered that are laying all over this place, that hundreds of thousands of people died within a few miles of where I'm standing. You can see the pockmarked ground, as everyone always describes, and all of the parts of the battlefield of Verdun are very near to here. Fort Vaux is a mile or so away. The Douaumont ossuary and Fort Douaumont you can see them from here. If the trees weren't in the way, I'd be able to see them very easily. So much happened here, so much. Of course, one of the things that you have to do anytime you visit a battlefield is you have to use your imagination a little bit. There would have been no trees here at all. Like many of the other places on the battlefields, the trees would have been cleared out. And all the pictures you see of this area, of any of the Western Front, you don't see trees. They were all cleared out by the armies. They were all being used. And so these areas would have been open, but they've actually cleared a lot of those trees. But boy, you can just see, it's not hard to imagine the artillery fire when you see the landscape. This soldier who was carved from the remains of a tree marks a spot with an interesting story here. You see, there were 160,000 dead from the Battle of Verdun who have never been found. 160,000 bodies remain on this battlefield, have not been recovered. Well, in 2013, 26 bodies of French soldiers were found in the remains of a farm on this site. And it turns out what happened was that these French soldiers had been killed during the battle, and their bodies were sitting in the basement awaiting burial. Well, in the process of waiting to bury those bodies, the farmhouse in which they were being laid in the basement was destroyed and collapsed down on them. And so the bodies were never removed for burial. And so they were found in 2013 and removed from this site to be taken to national cemeteries. Now, 7 of those bodies have since been identified according to this plaque, which is all in French. But they've got the names here of the men. Jean Caillou, who was part of the 360th Infantry Regiment. And of course, again, it says after every one of their names, Mort pour la France. That's a big deal here. It really is. You shouldn't take that phrase lightly. Just to give you an example with that, for example, if you are considered an author or someone who has created some kind of copyrighted work and you are designated as Mort pour la France, your copyright gets extended longer than the regular people do. I mean, so there are even legal ramifications for having that designation. Another one is Albert Gilbert Hennequin, who was a soldier second class of the 269th Regiment of Infantry. He died March 31st, 1916. Jules Letayer, who was a soldier second class 129th Regiment of Infantry, died the 5th of April, 1916. And so you can kind of see the list here. They all died around the last couple of days of March and the first couple of days of April. Right about that same time period, and it's probably around then that the farmhouse was hit. Outside of the chapel, there aren't many actual monuments here other than the markers showing you where the various homes and businesses were. But this is probably the largest one that is here, and it's also probably the saddest. À ces enfants morts pour la France, to the children who died for France. And then it has names. So behind me here, you can see a road that runs, and you can see how low that area is, and the road runs kind of down and into the distance. There's a sign up at the top that says that was actually a ravine that was used to ferry troops and supplies. I shouldn't say ferry because they weren't on anything, they were marching. But they would march in and out through that area because it was down, it was low, and so it was protected from artillery fire and gunfire and mortars and things like that, whereas other places were more out in the open and not as safe. So I thought this was pretty cool. There's this tree here that's obviously been planted recently, and there's a marker here. It's in German and in French, and if I understand it correctly, what it's basically saying is that Fleury, which was a city destroyed in 1916 by the Germans in the Great War, and Hohenlinden in Bayern, which is Bavaria, which was destroyed by the French during the Napoleonic Wars, planted this tree in solidarity as a way of showing that there's now peace between the nations. And I thought that was pretty poignant, pretty special.